Alright, I'm going to show you guys how to use the universal Pokemon Randomizer if you are playing Pokemon games via ROMs and emulation. One of the cool things about emulating Pokemon games is that you can randomize them. So kind of I guess you could call it a complaint about Pokemon games, is that every single area you go to in every Pokemon game always has the same Pokemon in it. Well, let's say you love, like I'm about to do, Pokemon Silver. I'm going to play Pokemon Soul Silver and I'm going to emulate it. But I have played Silver quite a bit, so I know all the Pokemon in the areas already, and I want to use some of the late game Pokemon in the starting areas and stuff like that. So one of the easiest ways to do this is with a randomizer. So you'll see here, there's a ton of different things you can randomize, and you can also use this randomizer for quality of life things. It's not exclusively just let's randomize all the stuff in the game and make it completely different. If you don't want to randomize stuff, you can simply just use it for updating like stats or getting rid of trait evolutions, really just basic quality of life stuff. Alright, so there's a whole bunch of things you can randomize. You can randomize your starter Pokemon. You can randomize wild Pokemon that you see. You can randomize Pokemon that trainers are using. You can randomize stats. You can randomize the types of Pokemon, basically like turning one type to another. You can randomize the abilities in Pokemon in the later games. You can randomize the moveset that they learn. You can randomize TMs, which Pokemon can learn TMs, which Pokemon can learn HMs. Pokemon that you are given throughout the game, Pokemon that you are given via trade, what was required for the trade, and then kind of smaller stuff like names of trainers, move tutoring and stuff like that. But once you get into the UI, I mean, the options are endless, and it goes all the way out to Gen 5. So pretty decent. 1 through 5 is pretty good. Okay, so once you download the randomizer for free off the website, it'll come in a zip file. You can unzip it. When you go to open the randomizer the very first time, it'll tell you need to download like Flash or Adobe or something. But basically, you download it, you come back here, you reopen it. So this is the UI for everything that you're going to randomize. And it looks like a ton of stuff, but it's really nothing crazy. So the first thing you're going to do is open the ROM of the game that you actually want, and it will recognize the game. So like I will go and do Soul Silver. Boom. As long as you see a Pokemon up here, it's recognized. It's also up here. Alright, so everything here is pretty much the changes that you want to make. And when you mouse over any of these changes, it will give you a fairly decent description of what to expect and what these kind of changes are. It's not going to give you like exacts on a lot of things. We'll look at that option later, but it's something you have to do after you make all your choices. And what this is basically doing, it's going to create a mirror ROM. It's actually going to create a separate file that you're going to use in your emulator to play Pokemon Soul Silver. It is not just modifying the ROM. So your base game Soul Silver ROM will always be there. Alright, so we're going to go through the tabs here. We'll kind of run through everything here. Alright, so you have your Pokemon base stats. You can leave the stats the same. You can shuffle them, which basically takes one value that a Pokemon has in the vanilla game and moves it to a different value. So special attack could become swapped with defense. Keeps the Pokemon stats, but it shuffles them around. Or you can do a true randomizer. This will make certain Pokemon significantly better than they used to be, or it could make them significantly worse. You don't know. It's all over the place. I'm just going to go through all the randomization stuff first. Then we'll talk about the quality of life stuff, so we'll come back to that. Abilities. You can randomize abilities. There's some different chances of having second abilities, stuff like that. You can turn off some broken stuff. Wonder Guard, I don't even know about Wonder Guard, but it's busted. You can have it follow the evolutions. You can ban trapping abilities, so stuff that stops you from escaping battles and swapping Pokemon. And then you can just get rid of negative abilities that are just straight up bad. Pokemon types. So you can change the type of a Pokemon. So you can make Pidgey into a dragon type. You know, it could be a dragon type. And you can have it, you know, follow on with the evolutions, or you can have them be completely random. Up to you there. And same thing with evolutions. You can pretty much randomize every single Pokemon that has an evolution stage, what it will evolve to. So you could evolve a Pidgey into a Caterpie. And the cool thing is you can kind of keep it to the same general strength level, the same type. You can, you know, limit it by the evolution stages. And then if you want to, you can make it so that every Pokemon always evolves into something other than the Pokemon it did evolve into. You got to remember, on these randomizers, there's technically still a chance that a Pidgey could evolve into a Pidgeot. You know, it's random, so this will make it so that it would never evolve into what it already had. We'll come back to these two boxes at the end. Starter Pokemon. You can customize the 3 starters you want to be like any starter, which is really cool. You can completely randomize them, or you can randomize it into a first evolution of 3. Static Pokemon. Static Pokemon are, you know, Pokemon you encounter via gift or purchase, or, you know, basically something that the game gives you. You can make them so that they're random and then the legendaries get mixed up. Which is random completely, or you can make it that you randomize it and the legendaries are still legendary, but it's a different legendary if you want that. Same with in-game trades. So you can randomize the requirements for the Pokemon that's given to you, or you can randomize the requested Pokemon for the trade and the given one. And if you do randomize it, you can randomize the nicknames. You can randomize the trainer names, the IVs, and then the items they're holding as well, which is pretty neat. Okay, moves and movesets. So you can randomize basically everything about Pokemon moves. Power, accuracy, how much PP they have, the actual type. Basically, you know, if you use Ember, it could be a poison type move. You can randomize the categories as well. And then the movesets, which are basically, you know, what every Pokemon learns as they level up. You can randomize it, but keep it within the same type. You can randomize it completely. Or if you're an insane person, you can make every single Pokemon know metronome, which is just bonkers. And if you randomize the movesets, you can make it so that every Pokemon, like, immediately has 4 moves, which is pretty neat. You can randomize it so that you learn the less powerful moves in the beginning, like the lower levels, and then they scale up. Another thing you need to remember with these random movesets is that a Pokemon at a very low level could gain access to an extremely powerful late game move. So you might want to reorder them so that they start with the lower powered stuff. And then you also have the option of changing, like, the percentage that a Pokemon gets for powerful damaging moves. So there's a slider down here. All right, into trainer Pokemon. So you can randomize these, or you can randomize them so that they are a type. Kind of like how the base game is. You know, a lot of, especially in, like, the beginning areas, they all have bug Pokemon or grass or whatever. You can randomize them within a type. When you randomize stuff, your rival gets randomized too. So if you want, you can force your rival to maintain their starter. I've been playing on and off, and my rival has gotten the most random Pokemon. The last one I had was an Executor. Here you can randomize the trainer's Pokemon, but keep them at the same strength that they are. So once again, if you randomize trainer Pokemon, they could have really powerful moves or really high levels. So you can kind of tamp it down to give you a linear damage or strength curve as you play the game. You can kind of edit the amount of Pokemon the trainer has by how many types there are. You can stop them from getting legendaries, because they can get legendaries. And then you can stop them from having Wonder Guard with abilities in the beginning of the game, OP. You can randomize their names, their classes. You can force them to evolve their Pokemon by a certain level. And then you can kind of get a level modifier in there too if you want to mess with that. Okay, probably the biggest thing here, the most important thing you need to know for randomizing is wild Pokemon. Most people come here because they want to randomize the wild Pokemon. Okay, so there are 3 different types of randomization for the wild Pokemon, and then there are 3 subsections of randomization. And this is going to heavily change how your game ends up playing when it comes to wild Pokemon. If you're coming to get a randomizer because every single time you walk in the grass, you want a 1 out of 500 chance to get one of every Pokemon. You know, you want a completely random chance every single time you step in the grass. That's not an option. You're not able to do that. Each area has a set number of slots that a Pokemon can be found in. So there's kind of two things with that. So if you do regular random, every area will have like the max amount of Pokemon you can find in it, and they will all be random. So you could have completely different Pokemon in there. You could have completely duplicate Pokemon in there. You could have duplicate Pokemon in the next area as well. You could have, theoretically, on the off chance, you could have Psyducks in every single area for the whole game if you put it on random. There is a chance. So if you put it on random, you run that risk, right? So one way to counter that is area 1-to-1 mapping. So when you do regular random, you tend to see, I've already tried this out, I spent hours testing this. You tend to see humongous quantities per area, per route, or whatever it is. You tend to have like 10 or 12 different Pokemon slots in every single route you go on. You know, it's extremely difficult if you're trying to quote-unquote catch them all to really know what Pokemon are in certain areas. You know, in the base game, you can just look up a guide and it'll tell you exactly what Pokemon are within that area. But here, you have no way of really knowing, barring something we'll show at the end, what Pokemon are within what area. And so, a true random makes it extremely hard to figure out what general random Pokemon are in a certain area. If you go to area 1-to-1 mapping, it limits the amount of Pokemon that you could find in an area based on how many Pokemon you could find in that area in the vanilla game. In my testing, it usually brings the number down to anywhere from 1 or 2 to like less than 6. I think 6 is probably the cap. So it just makes each area much smaller in terms of unique amount of Pokemon that are spawning there. And it makes it a lot easier to go through each area and try to catch everything if that's your goal. And with global 1-to-1 mapping, basically what this does is it takes the Pokemon that would appear in the game in certain areas. You know, sometimes you can catch a Pikachu in 4 different areas on the map. It basically swaps Pikachu out with another Pokemon. So it rearranges the regions and across the entire game of where you would find something. So let's say you want to do random, right? Now you have additional rules that you need to consider. So let's say you want to do similar strength. So in random, there is chances that you could get stuff with levels that are kind of out of whack for the area. It's not really something that I noticed happening a lot in the couple hours that I've played in the beginning. But if you put on similar strength, you tend to get significantly lower level Pokemon really throughout the entire game. I mean, the vanilla game always keeps you roughly like 5 to 10-ish levels under where you should be when you catch Pokemon in the wild, forcing you to grind. Similar strength does that very similarly, except it keeps them really low. So if you were to look at the logs, which we'll talk about at the end, you'll see tons and tons and tons of areas that have like level 1, 2, or 3 Pokemon. I mean, it's like level 1 to 10, and they're very late into the game. So if you're the type of person that wants to catch something late in the game and you like to catch stuff at level 1 and grind it up on its own, instead of catching it at level 40, similar strength is probably what you want. If you don't want to grind as much, don't go similar strength. The other kind of benefit is that it gives you a little bit more of a linear power level. Like, as you go, the game is progressively more difficult somewhat similar to how the vanilla game is. Catch 'em all mode is pretty cool. So one of the issues that you could have with randomly spawning wild Pokemon all over the game is there's a chance you just might not see certain Pokemon. They might not spawn in. Like I said, you could have a game full of Psyducks. Turning catch 'em all on basically forces the randomization to go through the entire Pokedex. So there's always a chance that you can catch every single type, every single unique Pokemon in the game. And there's enough slots where it'll eventually turn over and start again. This will eliminate a lot of duplicate Pokemon spawning in certain areas. You won't see the same Pokemon very often. So one of the downsides of this is if you see a Pokemon early in the game, you very well may not see that Pokemon again until very, very, very late. The other problem with this is that it becomes extremely difficult to, in fact, catch them all. Unless you use the log that we're going to talk at the end, you really don't know all the Pokemon that spawn in an area, and it becomes very hard to, weed through what is there and what isn't there, right? So that can be kind of a challenge. You also run into the problem that you're going to start catching, or you could be catching, evolved Pokemon. If you do similar strength, most of the time you'll be catching the first evolution, but in the other two options, you will see a lot of evolved Pokemon in the wild. And then type-themed areas. This one's kind of an interesting one where basically certain areas in the vanilla game, obviously if you fish, you're going to find water types. If you go into the forest, you're going to find bug types. If you go to volcanoes, you're going to find fire types. Here, it basically randomizes those areas. And it does it for every area. So every area will just have a random type of Pokemon, a bunch of different types of the same types within that area. So like it says here, you could see fire Pokemon in surfing encounters. And this does randomize, caves, water, fishing, pretty much anything and anywhere that you could catch Pokemon. It is randomized. So then you have some checkable options outside of the rules for wild Pokemon. So you can check if you want to have the seasons or the day-night cycles with separate sets of Pokemon. Up to you if you want that. You can make it so that it does not randomize legendaries. So if you don't want legendaries to appear in the wild like a regular Pokemon, you can turn that off. If you want to increase the catch rate, you can make it significantly easier to catch Pokemon. You've got all the different stats here based on their HP. It's quite low in the base game, I've learned. 30% chance of catching a Pokemon at low HP. I like level 2. I think that's much more fair here. And then you can randomize the held items if they even have a held item, and you can ban the bad ones for wild Pokemon. So I would say be very particular with how you pick this, because these two rules basically are going to significantly change how you play the game. You may want to do a couple of test runs in the starting areas to really see how they all interact. You could look at the log that will show at the end if you really want to see the differences, but it's kind of hard to tell until you play the game. All right, TMs and HMs. So some interesting stuff you can do here. Basically, you can flip every TM to be a new move, which is pretty cool. You can make it so that every Pokemon can learn every HM if you wanted to. You can make it so that every Pokemon that learns a move naturally can learn the TM, which is neat. You can make stuff like TMs for field moves stay if you want that. And then you can change the percentage of good damaging moves. And same with the move tutor. It's pretty much exactly the same. And in terms of TM and HM compatibility, you can randomize what options a Pokemon can learn. You can make it preferable based on the type. You can make it completely random, or you can make it so that every Pokemon can learn every TM and HM. And same with the move tutor, basically. Field items. So these are the little Pokeballs that you find kind of scattered about the game. So you can shuffle these around so that basically their order just goes all over the place. Now, this does not affect key items. that you need to play the game. It may save you from getting some overpowered items at the start. You could still get some of that stuff, like HMs, TMs, or you could go for a full randomizer. What this could do is you could end up getting a Master Ball in the very first thing you pick up. And then you can pretty much ban the bad items from showing up in field items if you want. Alright, so I'm going to do just a couple quick quality of life things. So if you really don't want to randomize your game, but you just want to do some quality of life things, we already talked about a few, but there's a couple here. You can come up here and limit certain Pokemon if you really want to. You could turn on race mode, which is kind of neat to play around with if you really want to. You can turn off game-breaking moves, one-hit KO moves. You can speed up the text, which is great. Makes it very, very, very fast. You can lowercase your Pokemon's names, which basically makes just the first letter become capitalized. You can randomize the catching tutorial, what Pokemon shows up while you're being taught how to catch stuff, and then you can ban lucky eggs. Alright, a couple other things. Standardized XP curves, I would recommend putting these on because I didn't realize until I started kind of reading about this, is that certain Pokemon just are harder to level up. And if you standardize it, every Pokemon levels up at the exact same rate, which is helpful when you have a randomizer going. This will have issues with trades, because trades then changes your XP curve. I think it's like 1.25 or 1.5 increased XP if you trade something. So be careful of that. I wouldn't turn that on if you plan on doing trading. And then you can also update the base stats to Gen 6 if you want to, which is cool, So you can change impossible evos as well. So basically this gets rid of all the evolutions that are trades or require, location-based things, contest-based things. Usually some of the items get removed, not all of them. You can look it up on the website. It just basically makes it so that you can do evolutions without having to frickin' trade them, which is amazing. And then probably one of the coolest things for me here, as someone who doesn't have a ton of time to play games, is you can actually lower the evolution level requirements. It makes every Pokemon fully evolve by level 40. It makes 3-stage evolutions get to their mid-stage by 30 or sooner. It just makes evolutions easier so that you get an evolved Pokemon not at 50, but at 30 or 40, and just sort of speeds the game up. All right, so you've checked off all the stuff you want to check off. You've found all the settings you want, right? Couple things you can do. So you can save these settings if you plan to come back and screw around with them. There's a couple of presets in here, but you can just save it, reload it, when you change your ROM, or if you just want to reset the stats, or if you want to do a new playthrough, and you can load them back up. Second thing, you can do a pre-made seed, so we'll show that. If you go to randomize, so you're done, right? You've got everything set up. It's time to randomize, so you hit randomize, right? Now, what you're doing, you can see it down here, you are making a ROM file. So this is your new, completely randomized ROM file. So go into wherever you put your ROMs, you can name it whatever you want, and stick it in there. So you come into your ROM folder, you can put it wherever you want, name it whatever you want. You can see I have a few here. I'm just going to call this one test, right? So it's going to save. Now, it's going to ask you, do you want to save a log file of all the randomizations? This is what I was talking about earlier. If you want to see every single thing that got randomized in the game, hit yes. And I'm going to do it here. We'll look at that in a second. Second thing, say you've got a friend and you both want to do some playthroughs of a randomizer, but you want to both have the same randomizer. One of the cool things is you can either produce a duplicate file and literally just send it in like an email or on a flash drive to them, which is really cool. Or you can simply just take the random seed and the config string and type it right in here under pre-made seed and populate the same randomizations, which is really cool. So, you know, if you want to do speed runs or if you want to just play through the game with a friend, you can do that. Really, really, really cool. So now your stuff is done. We'll take a look at the log file really quick just to kind of show you what to expect. So you'll see a text document here. You can load this up, and it is a humongous file. Depending on how much you've randomized, it's going to be bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, it literally shows you, you know, every single thing that gets randomized. It'll tell you what your starters are. It'll tell you what every single trainer has. It'll tell you all the types and stuff that get switched around. It'll tell you what isn't changed. So this is essentially the only way to know what Pokemon have spawned in an area and what level. The problem is it's fairly difficult to filter through this because, you know, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, different slots basically, or sets of stuff that's getting randomized from, you know, the surfing to the old rod to the good rod to the swarms to the grasses and the caves. So it's possible to look through here and see what was put in, but it's quite difficult to do it. And it's also, you know, if you're playing with somebody else, it's going to be unfair because you're going to know where exactly you want to go for everything. So if you want to see it, it's here. Make sure you save the file. Otherwise, you're good to play your randomized Pokemon.